This week's story is called The Echo of 1874. We start with just a little background on this story. Across the Atlantic Ocean in Ireland in 1874, they were faced with the biggest famine they had ever seen. Millions of people were starving, desperate, and needing the help from the world that had left them behind. A whole group of people that had felt forgotten about. Thousands of miles away back in the United States, somewhere in Oklahoma, this news reached the impoverished nation of the Choctaw. Just 16 years prior, the people of the Choctaw Nation had been forced out of their ancestral lands by the U.S. government in a brutal, deadly takeover. They had lost their homes, their crops, and nearly half their population due to rampant disease and starvation. These people had absolutely nothing to spare. But when the people of this nation heard about those struggling over in Ireland, they failed to see politics or geographical locations. They saw fellow humans struggling just like they had. These Choctaw people pulled together all the money that they could. Every cent they could scrape up, it added up to $170, which in that time is worth several thousand these days. They sent the money they collected across the sea to the starving families in need. It was an act of pure, unconditional empathy from a group of people who had just gone through the same thing. Generations went by, and it became a treasured piece of history for both people in Ireland and the Choctaw Nation in the United States. But as we all know, history has a way of repeating itself. So this is when things come full circle. Fast forward about 170 years to the year 2020. Coronavirus strikes and proved to be devastating for indigenous communities across the United States. The Navajo and Hopi reservations were hit tremendously hard, facing shortages of clean drinking water, medical supplies, and food due to their extreme isolated locations. In a way to try to help out, the local residents started a GoFundMe page, as many do in times of need, hoping to raise possibly a few $1,000s to help elderly tribal members out with groceries. And that's when our story starts getting good. Back across the Atlantic Ocean in Ireland, people were taking notice of the funds being raised. They remembered what happened way back in 1847. So Ireland starts spreading all this information about funds being raised, and it goes like wildfire. $10, $50, $100 for some people, all small donations which turned into one huge sum of money by the end of it. The Irish donors started filling the comment sections with deeply emotional messages. They wrote things like, "Ireland never forgets. You helped us when no one else would, and now it's our turn to stand with you." Another one wrote, "From Ireland with love, 170 years later." Because of this unbelievable chain reaction, the humble local fundraiser completely shattered its original goal, ultimately raising well over several $1 million. And the money, it just didn't buy food. It funded entire supply distribution networks, bought high-grade medical personal protection equipment, secured clean water drinking tanks, and saved countless lives across the reservations. It's really unbelievable how a small tribe putting together a small act of generosity in 1874 traveled across time all these years, and then it multiplied in the hearts of those who found out online. A whole new generation of people. And then that returned back across the ocean to rescue these tribes when they needed it the most. Kindness is always an investment that pays dividends, even if you can't see them, and even if it takes over 100 years. When you look at the world around us right now, everything's screwed up. The news can really get you down. You may think that your small act of kindness isn't going to help in this divided world we live in, but I think this story proves we're all wrong. You never know how your ripple will end, where it will spread to, and who it will affect. But somehow, whether it's big or small, you change the world. The Choctaw Nation and the Irish citizens proved that our greatest strength isn't power or technology, and it may just be the memory of someone's kindness. I hope you liked our main story today here on Briefly Good, and it brings you some hope heading into the rest of your week. Please follow this account for more good news. And part of what I like to do here on Briefly Good is give you some actionable strategies to help you maybe feel less negative, more hopeful. And today's strategy is pretty easy. It's just something you need to practice. So what I want you to practice is pausing. Practice the pause. Pause before assuming. Pause before accusing. Pause before reacting negatively. Make this shift from the fight or flight response your brain has to a more rational decision-making one. And it's one of these things that the more you do it, the more you become aware of how it can be helpful. I'm probably not alone in thinking this way, but a lot of times you snap, judgment, react to something. And then an hour later, a day later, a week later, you realize, I should have thought about that a little more before I said those things or I acted a certain way. So I'm trying to pause more in my personal life. Sometimes it works and sometimes I need to practice more, but give it a try and see if it's working for you. And that's our actionable strategy for this week's episode. And now we're going to end with the briefly good quote of the week, like I always like to do. This one comes to us from Mark Twain. The secret of getting ahead is getting started. I hope you have a great week. Thanks for tuning in to Briefly Good. I'm your host, Scott, and make sure you do a little good today, even if it's brief.